Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Map. I'm your host, Brother Calvin Muhammad, and as always, I am truly honored and privileged to have an opportunity to have these conversations. And for those of you all, if it is your first time actually tuning in and you're curious about what this show is concerning, Grandmaster Abdul Aziz Muhammad, who is the national trainer of the Nation of Islam, as well as the student assistant supreme captain of the Nation of Islam, a man who wears many hats. He was inspired to make sure that on our 26-year anniversary of the national training, he wants to make sure that we keep information in front of the public on what the National Training Corps is, how it came about, and exactly what the content is. More importantly, to make sure that people are informed that we do more than just get on the mat and practice martial arts, which is a critical part of the national training. But believe it or not, 70 to 80% of the national training takes place off the mat. So Grandmaster Abdul Aziz Muhammad, of course, also known as Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, was inspired really by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to ensure that that information comes to the public, which brings us to today. As always, in the Nation of Islam, we have a saying that we hear and obey. And so when Grandmaster Abdul Aziz Muhammad asked me to go ahead and start to make sure that we put this content together, we have another saying that a suggestion is an order. But, it's a beautiful order to carry out because I have the opportunity to dialogue with some of the powerhouses behind the national training, as well as subject matter experts on some of the content in the national training. And today will be no different. This brother, as many of our leadership in the Nation of Islam, this brother is truly an inspiring brother to me. And, he's one of those unique brothers that when you have an opportunity to dialogue with him, that everything that he says is not posturing, it's coming from the heart with your best interest at heart. He is uniquely qualified to talk about what we're going to talk about today because he has a depth of experience. This brother is one of the brothers that ties into another conversation that we have, which we're going to get into it. But he's out in sunny San Diego, California right now. I am honored to have this conversation with Student Captain David Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, my brother. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam, good brother. I'm doing fine by Allah's grace, Brother Calvin. Yourself?
I'm doing well. It's really good to see you today, brother. And we haven't even gotten the conversation started, but you can see the smile on my face. I'm already chomping at the bit and excited to really talk to you today about the subject matter at hand, which we're going to get into community engagement, but in specific conflict resolution. But before we do that, I always want to make sure that people have an opportunity to really understand a little bit about the people that we're having a conversation with. So if you don't mind, my brother, now where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, born and raised there, right?
I was born in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
I was raised in Baltimore. Yes, sir.
Raised in Baltimore. Now, what year did you come to the Nation of Islam?
1989, Mosque number 6.
1989, Mosque number 6. Okay, beautiful. That's beautiful. Oh, so whenever I hear 1989, I'm going right to Fight the Power, Public Enemy song. And so, but you came in during a time probably unlike any time we've seen since then. And that is, of course, the reemergence of the Nation of Islam. But there was a lot of consciousness that was involved. Now, how did you even become acquainted or start leaning toward the Nation of Islam to make that decision?
That's a long conversation, Brother Cal. But I can tell you, brother, I took my Shahada in 1987. I think it was in 1987, right? Mm-hmm. And in Baltimore, there's, culturally we do what street, still doing street things, still doing, just being a Baltimorean, as we call them, right? The minister, I heard the minister, I think he was dealing with Jesse Jackson's campaign. And I remember one day I heard the minister on television, and the minister he said, we will not feed our leaders to you like we feed raw meat to a dog. Dr. King was the last black leader that you killed, right? And I was like, who is that man? Who is this man right here? Who is this man, right? Who is this? And they was like, oh man, that's Farrakhan. You think he ever told me, right? I'm like, okay. So I was always, that piqued my interest for Minister Farrakhan, right? And then in 1989, he came to Baltimore at the Baltimore Palladium. And man, I got my on. I was decked, man. Got my tickets and I was there. Right? And after the lecture, I really was thinking like, man, that's the Islam that I need. I need that Islam's gonna put some discipline in my life. I need Islam's gonna make me into a righteous, upright man, right? So, from there, my recruitment center, 3013 West North Avenue. And I went there to get the tape. They didn't have it. Al, he's down in Miami right now, right? He was working the tape connection time. He sold me the tape, The Crucifixion of Jesus, the Destruction of Black Leadership.
I remember that.
Man, and that right, that was an Easter tape. And that right there just, I would play that tape so much, my girlfriend like, man, he in there playing Farrakhan again, right? So eventually, that led me to the mosque. I want to thank Brother Gregory Muhammad from Mosque number 6. He actually invited me to come out. I saw him in the store. He was like, brother, why don't you come to the meeting tonight, man? And I went to the mosque, and that was it. I haven't stopped coming since that day.
Yes, sir. Well, praise be to Allah for that journey, because, I want to bear witness that I believe that the Nation of Islam has benefited greatly from your presence, which leads me to, for those of you who are watching and listening, we did a conversation with student captain Andrew Muhammad out of Baltimore, and he made quite a few references to your training and your leadership, which I can bear witness to. And glad, but for those, I asked him some questions about Baltimore, but for those who don't understand, especially during that time in the Baltimore area, describe what it was like, what the Black community was like. You had the quote unquote our conscious movement, but you also had, you're talking about the height of the crack epidemic and things. What was it like during that time?
Well, Brother Calvin, at that time, I was involved in that street life, right? So coming out of that street life and coming to the position, but the time though, Minister Farrakhan was really, he was crisscrossing the country with the Stop the Killing tour, and it was an emergence of like the Nation of Islam. It was an emergence of the Nation of Islam. And, when we moved from 3013 West North Avenue to where our current mosque is on Garrison Boulevard, brother, there was a group of Muslims that was down the street already called themselves the Nation of Islam, right? You had the Ansar Law community.
I remember that.
On the all white. They was around the corner, right? Up the street, you had the Ahmadiyya Muslims up there, the people from like, man, this is the real Islamic way up here. We have all this Islam in these 4 square blocks, man. It was a interesting time, right? It was a trying time too, as you said, at the height of the crack epidemic, right? Man, when we came to that community was drug rich, and we really had to come in there and establish order, basically. Yes, it was a liquor store on the corner, had been there for years. I think it was Jim Parker's, and they were like, man, they would hang out there, and it would be, so under the great Captain Akil and Minister Jamil Muhammad,
I remember my brother. Yes, sir.
were able to secure not just the mosque, but also across the street, we had the tape connection. We had a little mini mart. We had a bakery, and we had a check cashing spot. So we came in, and we came in there with the ideal of establishing a community, right? And so that right there helped us to push all that riffraff out the way, right, and make room for what we were trying to do. And we had a brother John from PE. He had a thrift store there too. So yeah, so that was an interesting time. And then comes, our security came into Baltimore after our time in DC. When it came to Baltimore, it was interesting because I remember it was a police officer who had got pinned down into the projects, right? The projects in Baltimore, you can see it's a gated, you can see all the tears. Looks like you're living in prison. You can see all the tears from outside, right? And it was a police officer who had got ambushed there, right? And it was all on the news and everything that, he couldn't get down. He couldn't get down from up where he was at. And they were shooting. They had a sniper. They were shooting, and it was crazy. So next thing I know, a couple of days later, man, Captain McKill's like, look here, boy, we going down here to the projects, right? And we went down there, brother, and it was something that was needed and necessary, right? And the city of Baltimore greatly benefited from our presence in the projects, right? And
I want to give a huge shout out because the Nation of Islam at that time plucked quite a few stars from that area.
Oh man!
I can mention a lot. I know Brother Fontaine.
Yes,
I was a teenager at that time, and I was in awe at what was being produced from Baltimore to DC. And, I remember Captain Akil, at the time we knew him as Captain Rodney.
That's right.
Captain Akil. And he was like, as a teenager, he was one of my idols. At that time, it was called the National Security Team.
That's right.
To see him travel. And, when you would see brothers like him and many, many more, Student Minister Jamil, shout out to him. My father took a particular liking to him. He would get all of the tapes of the minister that Minister Jamil was introducing the minister. So for people that are listening and watching, Baltimore, especially during that time, had a unique purpose in the Nation of Islam. And one of them was, even prior to NOI security, you all had a particular way in which you engaged the community. When you talk about the various projects that nobody wanted to mention, most famously in that area, not too far, people think about Mayfair Mansions and everything like that. But there was a particular way that you all engaged the community that was effective, more effective than anybody really has seen. Could you tell us about that methodology?
Well, I could say, that was, brother, Baltimore is that's the place it's a port city, right?
Yes, sir.
When you have port cities, you have an influx of narcotics, right? Mm-hmm. So we can tell that side of just the Black community, we know that this what was going on here. I mean, I think it has the second largest heroin in the country, right? So places like Murphy Homes, Lexington Terrace, these was notorious projects. People would come there and buy drugs and wouldn't never be seen again, right? So these were notorious, projects that, but how we really engaged it was, I got to give shout out to Brother Larry Muhammad, because Brother Larry was really the chief of operations for us going into the projects, right? And Brother Larry background in special forces in the army, right? He was also a fireman, right? So one thing that Brother instituted with us going into the projects was that not only would go and make a patrol, right? but we would also take a broom and a dustpan with us. We
Mm.
would clean up, right? We were cleaning up in front of the houses, right? And I saw how that right there brought pride back to the members, the residents, right? Because I remember growing up when we had something called Afro Clean Block. And Afro Clean Block, every community would compete to see who had the cleanest block. And if you won, then the city would give you a big block party. They bring the band. You have a band. It was awesome, right? So everybody would be. If you go back in history, people say, if you ask people what was happening in Baltimore in the 70s, they're gonna like they down there wash the steps, right? We had marble steps all over the place, and every Saturday we had to go out there and scrub them steps, right, and clean up our block. So during the time of this the crack epidemic, right, of course, all that had faded away. But when Brother instituted, not only did we walk patrol, we also cleaned up, right? We could see that there was something that the residents began to start taking pride, and they started cleaning up themselves. And it just transformed the place. It transformed the place, brother. And it was, and the city couldn't believe it, right? And what they did was they stole that concept from us and they put it into something called the Downtown Partnership. If you go in Baltimore today, you'll see people walking around downtown Baltimore with radios, cleaning up, giving out tickets and things like that, right? That all came from them looking at the model that we instituted in the projects and how we were successful in with calming that situation down and reducing crime. And they instituted it in the city of Baltimore in a thing called the Downtown Partnership. Right. So yeah, I seen how they really stole that from us.
Yes,
right.
sir.
But it's all for the good. Anything that can help the city.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir. It's interesting that you mentioned that, and even mentioning your process. In the military, when you have something like Afghanistan, even Iraq, or anywhere where particularly the U.S. forces are sent, they have a 3-tier program by which they approach. It's called Clear, Hold, Build. First, they go in and clear whatever the threats are. And then after they clear those threats, they have to hold that position. And then from that point, they have to build or rebuild in that area. But in the clear stage, it's not what a lot of people think because it's a lot of relationship building that has to take place. Because if you don't gather some trust of the people, or particularly the trust of the leadership, ain't nothing gonna happen. They don't care about your firepower, your weaponry, or anything like that. But if you don't take that critical step, then everything you're doing is for naught. And I bring that up, and then I want to let everybody know one of the main reasons we're having this conversation with my beloved brother is because he came in as a guest instructor at the national training. He talked about, in particular, conflict resolution. So kind of segue into that, because you all are in the community, you dealing with people nobody wanted to deal with. If I'm not mistaken, police only had one way to deal with the brothers and the sisters that you all are dealing with, but you all came in unarmed, not presenting a threat, but you were successful. And I want to ask you first and foremost, when you think about conflict resolution, how much of a role did that play in your success?
It played a great role. It played a great role because, like you said, we understand that we are not the police, right? So the police is really to us. We came in as a security force. But we came in with more than a security force. When people were hired, they were just a body to just guard something. They're going to get some people that come, women training classes, canning classes, how to eat good food, how to cook good food, right? So all these things were a part of what we brought to the table into the projects when we came, right? And conflict resolution, we're constantly training to understand, number one, we're not the police, right? So it's one thing for you to tell people, listen, you can't you can't sell drugs right here, right?
Mhm.
And they're gonna be like, well, who are you? What you talking about? We've been doing this, man, for 20 years. Y'all just now getting here. What you talking about, right?
Mhm.
So we had to really, we had to really talk to the brothers, right? And and let them understand, hey, we're not here to, to bash y'all. We're not here to crush your industry, whatever you're doing, right? Well, when we are here right now, right, we have to move. We're gonna have to move this out the way, right? We have to move it, right, respectfully. We're coming to you respectfully. And there were many times we have sit downs with different people, right? To for them to hear us out,
Mhm.
right? And the other people know, hey, let's just move, let's just take shop somewhere else, right? Let's just be respectful for the Muslim, the brothers, they come in peace, And I think brother Calvin, we as an organization, the FOI, the Nation of Islam, period, right? We represent the moral consciousness of our people,
Mhm.
right? And
Yes.
whenever they see a moral force, they will respect the moral force if the force is moral, right?
Yes.
So, as a student captain, I would always tell the brothers, listen, when you see any of these brothers with me out here copping, buying drugs, anything like that, whoop they butt and then let us know,
Yes, sir.
right? Because you ain't gonna be over here fronting with us
That's
like you a
right.
Muslim. And the brothers really, they can respect that type of honesty and that type. We let them, listen, if one of us violate, let the punishment equal the crime.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So if nobody is dead, that means you ain't killing none of us,
Mm.
right? You know what I'm saying? But if so it was various meetings and background meetings and things we had to do, right? Meeting with people, assuring people that we weren't, that we were there safe and decent place for our people to live, right?
Mm.
And regardless of what people may think, Ray, Pookie, all them, that's somebody's son, that's somebody's nephew, that's somebody's grandson. They just ain't pop out of they ain't pop out of they have a conscience too, they have a family too. So, and one thing that we are taught to do is that we talk to the people we don't go to the people that's not in charge. We talk to whoever's in charge of y'all, that's who we want to talk to.
Yes, sir.
It's like we did with I want to talk to the captain. I need to talk to the chief of police. I need to make sure that he understands what he can let y'all know what y'all supposed to be doing as a related.
Mhm.
Had a great deal to play with it. Here, Minister Willie Muhammad really is the expert in the conflict resolution piece. Right?
Yes, sir.
My my part of that is crisis, nonviolent crisis. Right? When a crisis is when things are happening right now, how do we react to those things happening right now? Right?
Yes,
When
sir.
we do conflict resolution, that means people having an issue, they'll get on the telephone, call us up and say, hey, we want to squash the beef, right? So, but we had to understand there's another part of that. What about when the crisis is going down right now while we out in the field? What about we doing a patrol, right? So we brought that whole piece to that nonviolent crisis intervention piece, along with conflict resolution, and that just gave us a that I think that part right there really helped Baltimore to be able to do what Baltimore is doing now.
Beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. And I want to give a quick shout out to Minister Willie Muhammad out of New Orleans, because I actually got certified from him, and the team from Kansas City went to St. Louis when he was doing it. excellent information, and it works. It absolutely works. So shout out to Minister Willie Muhammad, who's still really working hard in conflict resolution. And so thank you for that. And if I may kind of dig into the crisis intervention, well, let me back up just a little bit because you mentioned something that I think is important. And we know that, you know, when you do community engagement, you have to have a force that resembles the community, as I think you all bear witness to, as you learned doing in Baltimore. If you want to be really effective, you got to pull members of the community in to become a part of that. But there's a fine line as well, because you mentioned the FOI being the moral force. And you mentioned that you put out there, if you find any one of us that are engaged in activity, we trying to get you not to, hey, all bets are off, you'll handle them accordingly. To that point, can you explain to those watching and listening, when you talk about the moral force, when you talk about you can't be drinking, you can't be smoking, you can't be out here messing with women or having all types of relationships, why that part, if you're talking about cleaning up your community, why is that part so critical to community engagement?
Brother, that's because, you know, our communities, with a lot of things we are it's slavery, right? So a lot of things that's occurred from slavery, right? How we treat each other, you know, even how our parents used to get a switch and beat us and things like that. All this stuff, you know, and all these multiple babies, brothers having babies all around the place. All this stuff is occurred from slavery, right? So when we come, you know, right? So we try to bring our civilization, that high level of living and existing, into what we do, right? So this is the part, you know, so that's why all that's important. All that's important, you know, and I would say this right here. We got to understand this right here. If you have a record, you can't get a security clearance. Mm-hmm. So this is another aspect of what we were doing in Baltimore, was that brothers couldn't work in Baltimore because they had records. We got them projects like they were like back to back to back. So we got 3 men on each shift, 24/7, in 12 buildings. Right? That's a lot of people, right? Yes. So we definitely had to recruit people to work the security firm, right? And a lot of those people became Muslims.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
I think that's what was the issue, was that we were cleaning up the city, the projects. We were getting people, you know, that it was, man, there was a flyer that they had out, Capt Brother Abdul Sharif Muhammad, and the minister. It said, we teach, we train, we employ.
I remember that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you know, we really stuck by that right there. But yes, sir, those things. And I can remember times I would see guards with the NOY shirt on, was doing something they had no business doing. I'd be driving, boy, get out the car. What are you doing with that uniform on? What are you doing? Smoking a cigarette, right? So one of the brothers who was over me, he was in operations, brother George. I remember him. We had to meet with Capt McKill, right? He was like, bro, Cap, he first off of the people of the city. He can't be out here telling people over. Right? I said, brother, when they put that uniform with the Storm Crescent on it, guess what? They got to act accordingly. That's how I carried it. I was my handle was DC6.
Yes,
right?
sir.
My handle was DC6, brother, and I remember when I left, Brother Kill said he had to hire 2 people to do my duties, right?
Right.
And you know, but listen, brother, I can tell you, the people that work for us, I can read their lips every time I walk on the site. They like, oh, here this nigga come. They like, oh, here he come, right? Because I was on them. I'm like, just, you know, inspection time. Are your shoes shine? Is your uniform proper? You know what I mean? Do you have the right stuff on? Right? Do you got your guard card? Which I was that type of brother, right? Because that's how I was inside the mosque as a lieutenant. That's how I was, right? So I brought that over to my duties at NOI security. And I would tell you, one time we had to pay people by cash because for some reason, whatever happened, they had to pay people by cash, right? So when my shift came down to pick up their checks, they said, man, like there was a whole nother company. But that's just how it's just how we are. We try to keep it. We want to keep it the way it's supposed to be. So when people see that brand, they understand what that brand is.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's funny. First officer of the city. That's that's really funny. I actually worked for NOI Security. We had a few contracts in Milwaukee, and so I definitely understand. And when you talked about crisis intervention, can I ask you to expound a little bit more on when you say crisis intervention, exactly what role that plays in community engagement and how important it is to be trained to handle that?
Well, there's two forms of aggressive behavior, right? There's verbal acting out and there's physical acting out, right? Mm-hmm. So when a person is verbally acting out, right, there has to be a verbal intervention, right?
Yes, sir.
And then when somebody's physically acting out, there has to be a physical intervention, right? You can't do a verbal intervention when somebody's physically acting out, right? So when it comes down to crisis intervention, right, we just made sure that we were, equipped. We equipped the brothers to understand, the types of if somebody the different levels of a crisis, right? So the first level of crisis, you got what is called the anxiety level. Somebody is just, they just out, they exerting energy, walking back and forth, pacing back and forth, huffing and puffing, right? So that person in that level, right? What's happened to you? What's changed your countenance? So they go from anxiety stuff, hitting their hands, talking about something, man, on everything I love. They start going everything I love, you know what I'm saying? They escalate to the next level. You see what I'm saying? So when somebody gets to that level, you gotta start setting limits. You gotta start setting limits. But the limits you set can only be limits that you can really, really enforce.
Wow.
You can't set a limit to somebody to shut up and you really can't shut them up. You see what I'm saying? So you gotta say, brother, listen, listen, what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave this area, right? We're gonna leave this area right here so we can continue this conversation somewhere else, right? Or, brother, if you continue to use this type of language in the presence of children and women, right, this conversation is over. That you can enforce, right?
Yes.
And then the third level of a crisis is the acting out person. When a person starts physically swinging and all that, right? So now you got to we got to be able to give them, and this is where our natural training comes in.
Yes,
because
sir.
A lot of things that we learn is defense, right? It's locks, right?
Yes, sir.
How to put somebody to come along, how to tie them up, how to hold them until they can, get you the last level, which is tension reduction, right? So we would work in 2 to 3 man teams, so we wouldn't have to hurt nobody, right?
Yes, sir.
So we would subdue them, hold them until either they calm down, or until we had to call the police to come and take them away. Because like this, if you want to act like a savage, we're going to give you to the savages. Look, we your brothers and sisters. We trying to help you, man. Listen, we don't want to see you we don't want to see you get locked up. If you continue acting the way you acting, then that's what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, people would, they would calm down, and rather you'd be surprised when people after those incidents.
Yes, sir. There's a lot of jewels within what you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And it's two in particular. One, I use a statement of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Once he talked about, don't go into the community saying we're going to take our community back, right? And I'm listening to you and understanding kind of the approach that you all had. And when you're talking about crisis intervention, how important, because, I've done community engagement with various individuals, and some people come in like they ready for combat. Like, we're gonna go in here and they gonna listen or else. And then I know the way that we were trained, but how important is that mindset when you're approaching, in particular, our people who more than likely, if you're doing community engagement in an area you should be, you're coming across some killers. So what is the attitude that one should have when you come in when you embark on this community engagement?
Well, it's like this. Most of the time we're being invited into somewhere, or we're coming to a community. We don't necessarily have what is called license to operate. Right. So sometimes, that's required, especially in a place like in California, in Los Angeles, right? With the gangs, probably same thing in Chicago with the gangs to operate in those places, right? Meaning that somebody gave you a clearance to say he's a good brother, he's an upstanding person, right? Y'all should, follow, listen to what the brother had to say, right? So so sometimes we don't have those communities, right? So when we come into communities, we really got to listen more than we talk. We got to find out, what's going on. Who's the shot callers. What's the, who is the person that the shot callers listen to, right? And find out, what organization, what community-based organization the work that we're doing, or that we're coming here trying to do, right? And we make contact with them, right? Now this is a little bit time after, but in the 90s, when I came back from Los Angeles to Baltimore, and I became in 2000, Baltimore was beginning signs of gangs, right? It wasn't before, right? And I remember working in one of the high schools, and I remember hearing the young boys, yeah, we the York Road boys and all this old stuff, right? So I'm like, okay, so this about the West Coast with the gangs is that the prisons dictate the atmosphere in the communities. So if the things like that spills over into the street in California, right? It's a different operation on the East Coast. On the East Coast, it's not like that. On the East Coast, it's basically, communities beefing with each other, right? When they go to prison, right? When they go to prison and they're outnumbered by the Aryan forces or the whatever, them brothers working together. Them sets are shut down. And the same thing happens here to a degree, right? But the conflict resolution piece, and going into communities, you really gotta listen more than we talk, right? And find out who's the real players behind the scenes, and find out what does this community need? What do the community need? Because sometimes people come to communities and we think we know what they need. You don't know what they need. You hear from them, right? They can be needing. We need a grocery store in this community. It's 56 liquor stores in this community with not one grocery store. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
so
sir.
how do we help them facilitate that? So these are things that we go in and we listen for, and how do we help to fulfill a perceived need of our community members that that the laws of society is just not hearing them.
One thing that you said that I think is key, and I want to ask you about, and even at times, I'll admit that I had become a little conflicted in dealing with the community, but it seems like in your area, you were able to strike a balance at this. And when people talk about community engagement, the question inevitably comes up, well, how do we deal with law enforcement, and at what point do we involve law enforcement, right? And you have mentioned, if I could quote you, you want to act like a savage, you deal with the savages, right? And so because you all were successful at it, how were you able to strike that balance to get to the point where you realize, okay, this is now something that needs to be escalated to law enforcement? How did you get to that point? What was the decision making like, and how did you establish the relationships?
Well, I know, Brother Calvin, you was here in the 90s with us, right?
Yes, sir.
In the 90s, right? We had the attitude, we were the law enforcement of the Black community.
Yes, sir.
And we carried it like that, right?
Yes, sir.
We carried it like that, and we let everybody know that. And the law enforcement knew that also.
Yes,
right?
Sir.
They knew that, they knew at a certain point that they knew that they had to come and talk to whoever was in charge, right? They had to come and, they had to, so what striking that balance was us really letting them know what we were doing, right?
Yes, sir.
Because like some things we would be doing, it would be not okay for regular citizens to do.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
But because of who we are and what we represented, right? We represented, right? They would give way to us. They would allow us leeway, right? And that's because Minister Farrakhan said it. I mean, we're not your enemies, right? We're not the enemy of law enforcement, right?
Yes, sir.
We actually are your best allies, right? But allow us to work with our people the way we work with our people. Because people understands us. We understand our people, right?
Yes,
we coming out of love. We're not coming out of try to establish law and order, right?
Yes.
We're going to appeal to the moral intellect of the individual, right? And that's not, and see, when law enforcement come, they're already on 10 when they show up. So it's no, you talking about, I just talked about the levels of a crisis, right? When law enforcement comes in and somebody is in their first level of being frustrated and agitated, right? 9 times out of 10, that person will be put in handcuffs. 9 times that person is not going to be talked to. He's not going to be talked down. They're not going to talk them down because that's not what they are trained to do, right? Yes, and the moment we realize that as a community of blacks in America realize, right, what the police job is, it's not to be social workers. It's not to be advocates and all. That's not inside of their training. What's in their training is this right here. Most law enforcement officers are killed in the line of duty with a sharp object. It's what they teach them in the academy, right? So this is when law enforcement comes on the scene, they are already thinking about everything they learned in the academy about not being killed by somebody who has a knife, a piece of glass, a razor blade, a box cutter, and things like that, right? So they already on edge when they're dealing with the people, right? And I'm gonna tell you one thing I seen in California, bro. This is I don't know what to call this right here, but in order for you to be a sheriff in California, you got to first work in the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
You got to work in the prison system first. So there is where they desensitize you to your people and to humanity.
Wow.
And they put you on the street after a certain amount of years as a in the prison system, right? And I was like, man, that's a heck of a situation, because you go on, just giving us, a little bit of background, but we really got to understand that law enforcement's job is apprehension, detention, and arrest. They are taught and trained how to take a regular casual stop and turn it into an arrest by just asking questions, right? So that's why we advise the brothers and the sisters, right? Don't talk.
Yes, sir.
Here's my ID. It's in your court, officer. What you gonna do?
Yes,
you
sir.
gonna give me a ticket? You gonna give me a warning, right? What you gonna do, right? And they're gonna start asking questions automatically. Where you coming from? Where you been? Who you been with? Where you going at? These questions right here have nothing to do with the fact that you stopped so-called traffic violation, right? So here's my ID. Here's my license and registration. I have nothing else to say, right? And so when we can start enforcing that, we'll start showing our community members how to just be quiet, dealing with law enforcement, because this is another thing that I teach your brothers. Anytime you come in contact with somebody that has a gun, it's a possibility that you can be shot.
Good teaching.
You know what I mean? So the reality is, hey, we ain't trying to get shot, right? So, hey, here you go, officer. So as it relates to us and the police, I remember one incident happened in Los Angeles when we were doing the security at this housing complex. And we came in there, and the brothers, they received us well and everything, and right? So we would come in there like at 6 o'clock to like 3 a.m, something like that. One day we come in, the brothers got attitude. Man, the police came and told us, man, who y'all think y'all is moving us out the way? We've been here telling so and so. So the police actually came there and told them, y'all daggone Crips, the Muslims came and put y'all in check. This the police came and told them, right? So now their attitude changed towards us. So this was when student minister Waliullah, Minister Hugh, was a regional captain in Los Angeles. We had to go down to Rampart Station and deal with the police down there. Let them know, listen, don't come to the site unless we call you. If we don't call you, don't come there. It's private property, right?
Yes, sir.
So these are things that had to be laid down. And what happens is you'll find, Brother Calvin, that most of the times when we come in and doing security, we come in and we talk to law enforcement beforehand, let them know these are areas we're working at, right? These are our shifts, right? And we will respect, and we want to know who's working, who's the commanders. Because when we call the police, we want quick action, because we know when we call you, it's going to be for something serious. It ain't going to be for, somebody peeing in the alley or, something crazy like that. You know what I'm saying? So, yes. So, I mean, it's got to be a mutual respect. And most of the times we can get that mutual respect from them when we come up front, deal with them up front, and they know, that we not, that we know what we're doing.
And I found that to be absolutely the case, because at the end of the day, if they don't have to handle certain situations, they don't want to.
Right.
And I'm gonna wrap it up with this question. And forgive me, it seems like a little Hail Mary, but the scripture says, without vision, the people perish. So looking with vision into the future, with all that you've experienced, with all that we've been taught and we've been trained, we know that ultimately what our people need and what our community needs, if we're talking about making our communities a safe and a decent place, we know that that need does not resemble current law enforcement, and it definitely doesn't resemble the lack of engagement that particularly Black men have in our community. So we're talking about getting to a point where our communities are safe and decent. What does that absolutely look like? What things need to be in place in order to actually have it to where your children, our grandchildren, our nieces, nephews, wives, mothers feel at ease in our community? What does that look like?
I can tell you in one sentence, brother. We have to adopt a value system. Once a value system is adopted, right, by Black America, once again, we can set our communities straight. See, a value system is going to say what's allowed and what's not allowed, right? So in this community right now, drugs are not allowed here.
Yes, sir.
Sex trafficking is not allowed here, right? But we have to be able to, enforce that by getting community buy-in. That means that we have to have community buy-in. That means that we got to go to all the businesses. We got to go to all of the, all the businesses, all the houses of worship, right? All the nonprofits, right? And we have to really decide this is a value system that we would like to have in this particular community. We can change our communities one community at a time if we did that, right? Because once the value system is in place and everybody is with the value system, see, the problem is you got so many people that's not with that's not with a decent and safe community. So you can't have people that are foreigners that's selling heroin out the back door.
Yes, sir.
Right? They're a gas station in the front, but in the back, they doing something else. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Or they are, and see, in when we go back and look at the crack epidemic, we can see that all these corner stores were allowing people to hang out in front of them, inside of them, and serve people drugs and things like that, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
See, that's being allowed because why? They figure that, hey, if they come in here, they're gonna buy some food, they're gonna buy some sodas, they're gonna buy some chips, they're gonna buy some sandwiches, right? So they're looking at it from their point of view of, hey, if they want to kill themselves, let them kill themselves. As long as they're spending money in here with us, then we good. Because we have sent in Baltimore alone, I know 3 generations to college already off the corner stores in Baltimore. You see what I'm saying? So, and I see how they created a whole underground economy in the Black community with drug money, right? And we know from Rick Ross, from Rick Ross, the exposure of that situation, that it was really, the United States government that was feeding the situation.
No doubt. Yes, sir.
Right. So, yes, I think in a nutshell, it has to do with establishing a value system where relationships are respected, right? Where manhood and womanhood are being taught. Those classes are being taught in our communities, right? Where children understand that their space is respected and protected, right? I think so. In a nutshell, brother, it's all about us adopting a value system, right? And then getting community buy-in. And once we say that's not going to happen, that's my nephew. I remember brother, Mr. B.I. Mr. B.I. came to us for our class and told us, he said, man, if you're getting rid of a raper, a robber, a murderer, that ain't snitching. You
That's right. That's
You know
right.
what I'm saying? Right.
Yes.
So we got to understand that those things are not going to be allowed in our community. The value system in place, brother, we clean our communities up.
Absolutely. Man, I really, we can go on and on with this conversation. I have thoroughly enjoyed the insight that you provided. And on an off note, for those watching and listening, you are actually a trained chef as well, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I know because my wife and I be living vicariously social media. I'll be like, look at this sandwich. Yeah.
Man.
So all praise is due to Allah for that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You get down too in the kitchen. I'll be checking you out too, bro, Capt.
You know, I do a little something, but you know, I'm not gonna put my pictures next to yours. Now, if you can, because you are also doing a lot of engagement. You're doing things right now that's dealing with the youth. I see you're also engaged in relationships with men and women, husband and wife. How can the people continue to follow you and see what you have going on right now? What ways can we stay in contact with you?
Well, I can tell you the best way to do it is to go on to me and my wife have established a nonprofit. It's called I Am Green, right? And I Am Green is the resiliency hub for the red, black, and green, right? So we have a website. It's called I Am Green and So Are You. Go and visit there. You can see what we have. We have weekly community engagement meetings, right? Yes. We have monthly resiliency workshops. Like this month of September, we're working on health and wellness. So right now we're in a 21-day fitness challenge. We're raising money for that. For the 25th of this month, there's going to be a panel discussion with a few medical persons around our health in the Black community, as well as Sirius Fitness is also doing a fitness challenge at the same time. So it's going to be like a telethon. We're going to call people up asking for money, help us out with that. Last month we did one on grow what you are. I might be saying that wrong, but anyway, the sister came on, sister from Fat Crop. She came on and taught people how to actually grow food in their homes, right, in small spaces and things like that. So every month, resiliency that we are highlighting for our community members, right? So again, the website is I'm Green and So Are You. You can hit us there. You can find out everything that we're doing. We got some wonderful things coming up here in San Diego. You know, my wife she's a genius, brother. And you know, you talk about relationships, right? Listen, our wives are gifts from God.
Yes, sir.
Our wives are gifts from God, man. They got that second sense, but they say that ain't right. You gotta listen to them.
Yes, sir. That's
so
right.
If we allow them to help us in what we're doing, man, we go by leaps and bounds, brother. I've witnessed that myself. You know what I'm saying? I witnessed that myself. That my wife worked with me, and man, she has really took the whole sustainability piece to a whole nother level.
Yes, sir. Praises be to Allah. I bear witness, brother. I bear witness.
Yes, sir.
You know, again, this has definitely been an honor and a pleasure. And for those of you who are watching and listening, if you have not yet done so, please make sure to follow Grandmaster Abdul Aziz Muhammad, also known as Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad. You can find him on the official Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad's YouTube channel, as well as you can find him on Facebook at Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, and follow the National Training Corps at NOINTC. That's on Facebook and Instagram at NOINTC. But Capt David, I was absolutely honored to have this conversation with you. I look forward to many more, inshallah, and I pray to Allah that he will continue to bless you, inspiring and with all the success that you and your wife are involved in. May Allah bless you and your family immensely, my brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, Islam, thank you, Brother Calvin. You too, brother. Please give your family greetings.
I surely will. Thank you, my brother. Praise be to Allah.